Hello and welcome to Sax Comprehensive. My name is Ken Gowdy and this is the second in the series of giving your saxophone a deep clean and changing oil. In part one we addressed some questions such as what is a deep clean as opposed to a full overhaul, why should you give your saxophone a deep clean, when should you give it a deep clean, what are the common problems that you may face giving your saxophone a deep clean yourself as opposed to sending it into a technician, what are the tools you're going to need, and lastly we gave the neck a full deep clean and changed oil. So in this video, we will disassemble the saxophone. The first thing to realize is that there are some keys that are situated below other keys, which means that you have to remove the keys above before you can have access to the keys below. So removing these sets of keys require a logical order. There are other keys that are situated apart from other keys, and these can be removed at any time. Everyone will have their own starting point when dismantling their saxophones. Some will start by removing these keys that are situated apart from other keys, while others will start from the top of the saxophone and work their way around the saxophone. If you do not have a special vise for holding a saxophone, then it is possibly best to start with those keys sticking out, which will make it awkward to lay the saxophone flat on a table. So you could start with the palm keys and then the left hand pinky table. I would not recommend dismantling the saxophone on a saxophone stand, as you need to get to the screws below, and the force to release some of these screws may knock the saxophone off its stand. Best to hold the saxophone in your lap or on a flat cushioned surface. After these keys are removed, then you can lay the saxophone flat and work your way around the saxophone. You should already know what you're going to do with the pivot screws and hinge rods, whether you're going to leave them in the saxophone as you remove the keys, or whether you're going to put them in some form of organizer. We talked about organizers in part 1. If you're going to leave them in the saxophone, then be aware that most of the keys can be removed by loosening one screw. But if there is some form of resistance, then don't force it. Simply loosen the other screw holding the key in place. As I remove the pivot screws and hinge rods, I will place them in my organizer to keep track of them and be better able to clean them. The springs are unhooked before removing the keys using a spring hook. Use minimum distance when unhooking the springs as you don't want to stress them or snap them. The removed keys are laid out in the order that I removed them, so that I just simply need to reverse the order to reassemble them. So before I show you in detail how I dismantle the saxophone, I will show the order in which I removed the keys. But bear in mind your saxophone will be slightly different than mine. Make sure that you only remove the pivot screws and hinge rods holding the keys to the saxophone, which are situated in the saxophone posts, and not any of the other screws used for aligning the keys. Also, it's a good idea to take photographs of your saxophone to use as a reference in case you want to know where a key came from or how it is situated in relation to other keys. So I start with the palm keys and then the left hand pinky table following the order of the screws. So the G sharp lever, then the low B flat key, then the low B key and the low C sharp lever. I will remove the low C sharp key at some point during this process to get better access to the lower screws of the left hand pinky table keys. Then I will remove the G key. Then I will remove the high F lever, the B key and the A key, which are all connected with a hinge rod and pivot screw on my saxophone. Then I will remove the BIS key, so starting with the keys situated above and moving to the keys situated underneath. Then the high F rocker, then the F sharp, F, E and D keys, which are all connected on the same long hinge rod. Then the G sharp key. Then I would remove the low E flat and the low C keys. On my saxophone they are situated on different parts of the post, secured with pivot screws, whereas on other saxophones they may be connected to the same hinge rod. Then I would remove the side F sharp key, then the high F sharp lever, then the high F sharp key, then the E key, then the side C key and the side B flat key, then the side C lever, then the side B flat lever, and lastly the octave mechanism. Remember that you do not have to follow this order. Simply look at your saxophone and come up with an order that best suits you, bearing in mind that some keys are stacked one above the other and would have to be removed in a certain order. Now let me show you the video of me dismantling my saxophone. Most of the keys are held on by pivot screws, and because I'm going to clean these pivot screws and hinge rods, I will take them off and put them in my organizer and lay out the keys in the order in which I've taken them off. The palm keys are held on by small hinge rods, so use a small screwdriver. On my saxophone, 2 of the hinge rods face one direction while the other faces the other direction. Because the springs are pushing the palm keys, you may need to use the pliers to remove the hinge rods. Either put the hinge rods back in the saxophone or put them in your organizer, and remember to lay out the keys in the order in which you took them off. The low C sharp key is attached to the low C sharp lever by a forked joint, so be aware of this when trying to remove the key. Unhooking springs will make it easier to remove the keys, and most keys will come out with just one pivot screw removed, but don't force it. If it's difficult to remove, simply loosen the other pivot screw. Some pivot screws may be stuck or tight, so be careful when undoing them in case the screwdriver slips and scratches the saxophone. On my saxophone, this lower screw is fixed to the saxophone and does not have a screw slot in it for removing it, probably because of where it's located. You would not be able to use an ordinary screwdriver. A few pivot screws are in awkward positions to get to, and a screwdriver has to be placed at an angle. Taking off this set of keys, I did not unhook the springs. Be careful when removing this part of the octave mechanism, as all of the pieces might come apart. Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully you found this video helpful and informative, and if you did, then give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber, then consider subscribing to this channel. In the next video, we will clean everything. We'll clean all of the keys, the main body of the saxophone, all of the pivot screws and hinge rods. So hopefully I will see you then.